Blog Talk Radio.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot, oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girlz. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here are your supernatural hosts, Patricia Baker and Becky Andreasen. Supernatural Girlz.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girlz Radio. I am here with my incredible, talented co-host, Patricia Kirkman. Hi, Patricia. How are you tonight?
I'm absolutely fine after that wonderful introduction. Hey. Whew, feels good.
That's you. That's you.
My goodness. Life
so
is good today.
We've been talking today, you and I, just briefly, comparing weather notes. We are freezing here in New England. The temperature plummeted. Wind has been whistling through. People lost power here. And it's, what was it, yesterday in Tucson, 85?
Yes. And today we're about 10 degrees less than that, but it's damp. We've had a drizzle on and off all afternoon, which makes it feel really cold because we're not used to it.
Oh, my goodness. 75
if you're not
in
in
a
the
drizzle when
sunshine
you're
here,
cold.
it's like being in a refrigerator. I'm sorry.
Oh, honey, you don't know what a refrigerator feels like till you've been
I
here.
remember it well. That's why I'm in Arizona now.
That's right. That's right. I understand. Oh, my goodness. You know, before I forget, I have got to announce. Now, you have yet to meet Kavita from this wonderful, wonderful place that she lives in with her incredible husband. She's got this great husband, Sunil, and they have a company called Cosmic Fusion. Now, Kavita, you probably heard me talk about her. She is one of the most powerful women on the planet, and she does these transmissions. She brings you out of the matrix into 5D transformation. She's been doing prosperity treatments, and now she's got a workshop coming up. And that is something she is offering only to our listeners for a $200 discount they will get if they go to our homepage, supernaturalgirlz.com. There's a discount coupon that you can use. And, again, it's only for our listeners. The coupon is S as in Sam, N as in Nancy, G, Supernatural Girlz. So that's the coupon code. You will see it on our homepage near the Cosmic Fusion logo. And I highly recommend these workshops. They're extremely different and extremely powerful. You have yet to take one, Patricia, but we're going to round you up and get you on one of those webinars. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, Kavita's amazing, and her husband is just as amazing and wonderful. Really heartfelt people, and they're trying to bring everybody up to a whole new level of consciousness. So if you want to experience that, this is your chance, and you can do it at a discount. $200 off, and just use the code SNG, Supernatural Girlz. So, let's see.
Like a great idea.
Isn't it? I mean, we've all got to get up there to a whole different understanding. You look at all this craziness around us in the world today. I couldn't believe the news. Again, all these shootings all over the place. One near you in Arizona.
I know.
Terrible.
It's just incredible. Absolutely incredible.
And it's
Man's
scary,
inhumanity to man is reigning too much positive.
I know. There's just too many
issues
chaos
for us to look
demons.
at.
Too many.
Now, we have to look at it. You have to look at it positively for a change, because somebody's got to make some choices to make a difference instead of just accepting it and not wanting to see it.
Exactly. And that's why when you change yourself, you transform your own consciousness. It helps. So doing sessions with you, doing sessions with me, working with Kavita, doing a workshop with her and Sunil, all good ideas. It all does make a difference when you change your own consciousness. It has that pebble in the pond effect. It just radiates out and affects everything around you in a positive way. So it's a good thing to do.
That sounds fabulous, absolutely fabulous, and we all could use that extra boost right now.
Yeah, what's going on in the numbers? Now, today's an 18, but tomorrow's a 19. What's going to be happening?
Well, actually, the month itself makes us all extremely sensitive. Universally, the universal month is all about relationships, partnerships, fears, fantasies. We need to be the peacemaker. We need to help lift people up. And instead, some of us are hanging on to the coattails and being pulled down instead of going forward. But tomorrow is going to be a 3 universal day, which is wonderful because it has a luck factor to it. It deals with all types of communication, which is anything to do from a class to a study, whatever we can do. That's absolutely fabulous for us tomorrow. But the most important part is quit gossiping. Let that garbage go. Let's pick up and lift up. It'll make a big difference for everybody.
That's great advice. Nice. And I'm glad tomorrow's about communication. There's a luck factor because I have to do a presentation to a group on property tax reform.
Oh.
So I'm going to tell the horror stories, and it's going to make people want to run screaming into the night, I'm sure.
No, you're going to be so creative about how you put it out there, it's going to make a difference. You're going to be heard. Because remember, you in the universe are dealing with the same issues. Get out there and push, dear, push. Lift up.
I am excited about this. It is actually a doctor who's wonderful, a wonderful Western Mass doctor, invited me to come and do this presentation. He said, this is not on anybody's radar. He said, you've got to come and do this talk. And I normally don't do this kind of thing because my thing, as you know, is what you and I both love, which is the paranormal. But also this subject's been near and dear to my heart. That's why we advertise the property tax book, every commercial on the show. It's so important that people pay attention to this so they don't lose their homes, especially as they get older, fixed incomes and all that lovely stuff. You know, it's something everybody has to watch. But I will do my presentation tomorrow. I'll let you know how it goes.
It's going to go fabulously. A lot of light and love is already around you to take in.
Oh, great.
Talk.
Thank you. And just so everybody is aware, you know, we continue to do the Skoll group, and this Friday we're going to be doing it again with Becky Andreasen and George Lugo. And I just posted in Twitter and on Facebook a trail cam picture that was taken. And this picture was taken at 6:30 in the morning on our driveway, which our driveway is almost a mile long, and nobody can get on or off our driveway without us knowing about it. So it's very much a secured area, security cameras. And this happened to be a trail cam that's focused on the driveway. And we went to get the card, and I put it in my computer, and lo and behold, there was an archangel. The photo. I sent it to you a couple of weeks ago.
It's incredible, absolutely incredible. I showed it to a few of my clients. They could not get over it. Absolutely amazed by this.
It is amazing. And so I just shared it on our Facebook page for Supernatural Girlz, and I also sent it out on Twitter for our Twitter followers. Please send it along to everybody you know. It's really, there's something about the photo in and of itself that's healing. Just looking at it brings good vibrations to everybody. So that's why I put it out there today. We all need that.
No, for sure. For
sure.
Yes,
we do. Well, tonight we're going back to ancient Egypt. One of my favorite subjects. Now,
I'm a part of that world.
Oh, yes, I know. We both share this love of ancient Egypt, and still so many mysteries to uncover, so much still unknown. I can't believe it. After all this time, we still are talking about the mysteries of ancient Egypt. We haven't figured it out, but tonight we may get to figure it out with the help of our author, Scott Creighton, who is coming on board in just a few minutes. Now, he's written an incredibly fascinating book, The Secret Chamber of Osiris and Lost Knowledge of the 16 Pyramids. He calls himself an engineer, but I think he's also a bit of a detective, don't you?
I think he's more of a detective than an engineer, for sure. He's amazing.
He is. He has a grasp of this. Now, of course, I'm going to have to ask him to talk about the geometry stuff to, dumb it down, because I got a D in geometry. I couldn't get it. So I'm hoping he can make it so even I can understand it. But he's got some really interesting thoughts about what the pyramids were really used for. And and also his adventure stories in Egypt. So we got to bring this man on. He has a lot to share with us, and he's called in. It's very late at night there. He's called in all the way from Scotland. So thank you, Scott, for giving up your sleep time just to come on Supernatural Girlz. And Scott, welcome to the show.
Hi, Patricia. Hi there. It's good to be here.
Well, thank you so much. What time is it over there? Is it about like 2 in the morning or something?
No, it's a bit earlier. It's about 11:40, quarter to 12, round about that.
Oh my! Well, still, that's pretty late.
Yeah, but it's okay because I'm sitting here in my lounge. I'm got a coffee here, keep me awake. I'm sitting. I'm looking out the window, and it's a beautiful sky. I've got a little bit of the Northern Lights.
Wow!
Yeah,
fabulous.
There's been a solar flare. It's basically hitting the atmosphere and getting lovely greens and blues rippling across the sky. So it's lovely.
Ah, wonderful!
Delightful.
Oh my! Yeah, you painted a beautiful picture for us. Thank you.
It sounds a bit like the film Local Hero. I don't know if you remember the film Local Hero. It was set in Scotland. It was about the Northern Lights.
Oh,
by
gosh.
a brilliant Scottish director, Bill Forsyth. Great movie.
Well, we're a bit too far south to enjoy those types of things, but we've both, certainly, Patricia and I, have seen photographs, and that is quite a sight to behold. You're lucky that you get to see it in person.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Wow. Well, now,
Definitely.
you've written a wonderful book, The Secret Chamber of Osiris and Lost Knowledge of the 16 Pyramids. You went on quite an adventure in Egypt, and you encountered a few characters along the way. We got to hear all about this. How did you get involved in this, Scott?
Yeah, my goodness, I tell you. I suppose it's like most people, when they're young, they're growing up and they get to hear about the pyramids. Well, I suppose, in elementary school, in junior high, wherever, at school, that's where you first learn about these amazing structures, and you get projects to do to work on about them, and you learn all about the pharaohs and the pyramids, the pharaohs' tombs, and so on and so forth, and you just hear about this incredible culture that existed 4,500-5,000 years ago. And it's just something that captures the imagination. And then when you're a little bit older, you learn a little bit more about it, and then you get the bug, I suppose. You get the questions that the books, the Orthodox books, and my goodness, there are thousands of them. Literally thousands of books written about the ancient Egyptian culture, and you read loads of these books and they don't answer a lot of the questions.
No, they don't.
They just don't. And you're reading them and they're raising even more questions. And for me, that was just, I got to find an answer to this, because it's driving me crazy. The most simplest thing, were these really tombs for pharaohs in this country that existed 4,500 years ago? And how old are these structures, and how did they really build them? Did they use these ginormous ramps, that was almost as gigantic a project as the actual construction of the pyramid itself, And there's just all these questions. And why didn't they find any pharaoh's body in any of these pyramids? They've got these what the Egyptologists they call sarcophagus. That's the stone box, the granite box.
They're in the pyramid, but there were no bodies found.
No bodies
Ever.
found. Patricia, they found one body, one pharaoh, intact, with always what they call the grave goods and so forth, and that was King Tutankhamun. And he was only found not in a pyramid, in an underground tomb in the Valley
he was
of the
found
Kings.
in the Valley of the Kings, which they came to call it the Valley of the Kings. And
that's right. You know,
yes,
he wasn't
but there
found
were
in
other
a pyramid.
Yeah, there were other tombs there. There were other bodies there, other mummies there, but
loads of them.
not in the pyramids.
They've not found any king in any pyramid. Another thing as well, which a lot of your listeners probably may not know, is that, you know, the first pyramids that the ancient Egyptians built were the giant pyramids. You know, and all the smaller, sort of less refined ones, and you know, less well constructed pyramids, and much smaller ones came afterwards. They built the giant ones first, and the thing is, there's only about, I think, 3, maybe 4 of them that have actually got these stone boxes in them. You know, so they don't all have, you know, a granite box for, you know, which Egyptologists would say was to contain a body.
Don't. Now, you have the large pyramid at Giza that does it, but what about the step pyramid at Saqqara? Did that have a stone sarcophagus in it or not? Do you know?
Well, it had a vault, and it had didn't actually have like a sarcophagus as such, but there's a small tomb to the south of the step pyramid at Saqqara. It's called the South Tomb, and that had a stone box, but it's very peculiar. It's very small. You know, you couldn't really get a person in it, and the lid closed on it sideways. You know, it wasn't on the top. It was you know, in 2 slots in the side. You know, it closed at, you know, at the side. You know, so it's just all very peculiar. It's very, very small. It wasn't like a lot. You know, the sort of 6-foot sarcophagus or stone box that you find in the Great Pyramid. This was only like a couple of feet. You know, so just and. You know, they found in like the step pyramid, they found like some bones, a foot bone, I think it was, wrapped in sort of linen, mummy wrappings. You know, and they found this in various sort of pyramids, various pieces of human bone, sometimes animal bone here and there. But in the step pyramid, they found this particular piece of bone wrapped in mummy wrappings, and they dated the mummy wrappings to 1,000 years after Zoser, the guy that's believed to have built this structure. You know, so that was basically an intrusive burial, as are most of the you know, remains that they have found in pyramids. And there's only been like a few that they've actually found remains in. There's about 138 pyramids in Egypt in total that were found to date, 138. But in the Old Kingdom, you know, the giant pyramids, there's only about 11 giant pyramids. You know, so in those pyramids,
but still, it's an amazing amount of pyramids that they have built. Now,
incredible.
Isn't it, Patricia? Now, Scott, when you first saw those, I mean, when I first saw the pyramids, I could not believe how large they are, even though I had seen many, many photos. The enormity of these structures is overwhelming. Did you feel that way when you saw them for the first time in person?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, wow. Yeah, totally. It's almost overwhelming. You just do not get the concept that you just can't, you know, if you haven't been there, you just cannot grasp the enormity of what's in front of you. You know, but it just reaches to the sky. It just towers over you. I mean, the Great Pyramid at Giza is 481 feet tall. You know, and to think, you know, each of those stones in that structure weighs 2.5 tons. And there's about 2.5 million of them. You know, that's the sort of rough modern estimate is about 2.5 million stones of about 2.5 tons each. And some of the blocks inside that line the walls of the chambers in the Great Pyramid weigh upwards of 50 to 70 tons, and they're made of solid granite. You know, and the granite that is leveled and polished to a degree that just beggars belief that they were able to do that kind of craftsmanship 4,500 years ago. It's just, but yeah, I mean, it's overpowering. You just have to see it to appreciate it and to, get the sense, the sense, and appreciate what these amazing ancient people did.
It is amazing, and still there's many theories about how they were built, and I know you're going to get into that in a little while too with us, because that was a part of your book. But you also had some adventures here. Now, again, there's still so many mysteries, and then you encountered the man who was in charge of the pyramids. And what do we call him now? The Minister of Misinformation? I don't think he's there anymore, is he?
No, that's Dr. Zahi Hawass.
Right.
He was the former head of antiquities of the Supreme Council of Antiquities in Egypt. He's no longer in post. I think he. When the regime changed, a couple of years back, he basically was had to leave the position, so he's no longer in position. I think he basically now is writing and doing tours actually himself, in Egypt. But yeah, I went to Egypt in 2008. When I was there, I met up with Robert Boval and Graham Hancock. Your listeners may be familiar with those names. I was there to try and basically find the secret chamber of Osiris. I basically came up with this theory about the myth of Osiris and what that myth actually was and what it meant. And that led me into identifying a location in Egypt where I believe this secret chamber of Osiris was. And so that's the reason, basically, why I went to Egypt in 2008. And it kind of starts with, I suppose, the myth of Osiris. Now, Osiris was ancient Egyptian god of fertility and rebirth and agriculture. He's very much associated with grain and agriculture. And if you see any images of Osiris, he's usually standing, looking to the side with the three-pronged attis. It's called the attis crown, and his face is usually coloured green. And that's to symbolize his association with agriculture. He's the ancient Egyptian god of rebirth and agriculture. And he's usually standing with the regalia of power. That's his arms are crossed, holding the crook and flail. Now, the myth of Osiris tells us this myth was first written in the 5th dynasty. When they stopped building the giant pyramids, we find these ancient texts called the pyramid texts, and the Pyramid of Unas, the Pyramid of Teti, the Pyramid of Pepi. There's of the 5th and 6th dynasties. They're written onto the walls of the burial chambers in these pyramids, and are the most ancient religious texts that we have anywhere in the world.
Now, can you read the hieroglyphics? Were you trained in that also?
I'm self-trained up to a point. I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I understand the rules. I understand the grammar. I can read, a lot of the images, but most of the time I'll have to look up my ancient Egyptian dictionary. But yeah, I can read it at a basic level, I would say. But as I said, I'm self-taught in reading hieroglyphs, and it's not too difficult to actually come to terms with it. It's complicated in some ways, but once you grasp the basic sort of tenets of the language, the basic structure and the grammar. It's fairly easy after that, but
Well,
so yeah.
One of the things that just stymies people looking back at this ancient culture and all of what it achieved is the fact that so much is steeped in symbolism, and it's in a symbolism that most of us cannot relate to. We don't get it, so. It's like walking into another reality, I would imagine, when even though you have a grasp of hieroglyphics, there's still symbolism within the hieroglyphics that make it difficult to understand what they were actually talking about, right?
Well, yes, because you're absolutely right, because, we still, the nuances of the language we will just never get to grips with fully. We just won't, because Champollion, who was the first person to crack the language. Well, there was a guy Young who did a bit of it before Champollion. That was our key to cracking the Egyptian code, as it were, the language. But yeah, there's still so much of it that we're really just guessing. It's best guesses at what these symbols actually mean. For example, the word Akhet. There's an ancient Egyptian word called Akhet, and Egyptologists, even to this day, argue what this word means. Because the Great Pyramid is called Khufu's Akhet, or the Akhet of Khufu, or Akhet Khufu, and Egyptologists still don't know exactly what the word Akhet actually means. We can guess kind of what it means and get a rough idea what it means, but not the exact understanding that the ancient Egyptians themselves would have had for the word Akhet. And, as you probably know, Patricia, I have a good stab at what I think the word means in the book.
Yes.
But going back to Osiris, there's a whole symbolism there in the myth of Osiris that's come down to us, that's been passed down to us from the pyramid texts. This myth talks about how Osiris, he was a ruler, he was a king of Egypt, he was married to Isis, and he had a brother Seth who was jealous that Osiris was the king, and Seth wanted the kingship of Egypt for himself. So he plotted against Osiris. And, it's an old story,
It sure is.
It's an old story, but there you go. Even nowadays, it still goes on, But here we have this going on in ancient times, and this legend that's been passed down to us. And so eventually Seth captures Osiris, and he kills Osiris, he cuts his body up into 16 pieces. Some parts of the legend say 14 pieces, others say 16 pieces. And he scatters the body of Osiris all across the land of Egypt. Now, the other thing the pyramid texts also tell us is that the pyramid, it says quite explicitly, quite plainly, the pyramid is Osiris. Osiris is the pyramid. The construction is Osiris. Osiris is the construction. That's what it says. So that was the light bulb moment for me when I actually made the connection between these two pieces of information. The legend of Osiris and this piece of text in the pyramid text, which said the pyramid is Osiris, because it's something that Egyptologists, Orthodox mainstream Egyptologists, have totally overlooked, because they essentially see that each pyramid was a single royal funerary structure for one king. There was no link between any of the pyramids. They were just built as one funerary complex for one king, with no thought to what went before or would come afterwards. They were isolated funerary structures. There was no plan, no grand scheme to build these structures. And that's where I think Egyptology is fundamentally flawed with particular regard to the first giant pyramids that were built. And
I agree, because and one of the very important points you bring up in your book that illustrates this further is the fact that if it was this big monument to the king, then how come his name wasn't in it or all over it, which would have been typical of a monument to a ruler?
Well, this is exactly it. You know, if you look at the pyramid structures later, see, I make a distinction between the pyramids. As I said earlier at the top of the show, there are 138 pyramids in Egypt that we know of today. Now, I'm talking about the first 16 pyramids that the ancient Egyptians built. That was the giant building period. And it's quite distinct and it's quite different to the pyramids that were built later. It's almost as if, Patricia, there was two completely different civilizations involved here, separated by a long, long period of time. This is what I go into in the book. It's like the giant pyramids were built for a completely different purpose, a completely different reason to the pyramids that would come much later. And I go into this in some depth in the book. And the later pyramids, as you pointed out, and temples and tombs, you know, these are all decorated with, you know, scenes from the pharaoh's life, you know, everyday scenes. And, you know, they would paint, you know, grain and water and wine and beer and all sorts of animals on the walls of these tombs, scenes from everyday life, because that is what the king wanted to take with him to the afterlife, you know.
Right,
so
exactly. And it
yeah.
was a monument to a ruler, and so you would see all kinds of things in there that depict that. But in the Great Pyramid, you don't see any of it. It's not there.
You don't see. It's not there. It's absolutely not there. And I'll give you a very, very succinct example of what we're talking about here. The pharaoh Khafra, he was the son of Khufu, who built the Great Pyramid. Khafra built the second pyramid at Giza, the middle one. It looks like the tallest one. It's the one in the middle. It looks like the tallest, but it's not actually the Great Pyramid. It's the Pyramid of Khafra. And there's a sarcophagus, or what the Egyptologists call a sarcophagus, which I call Nebank. The granite box in Khafra's pyramid, the Egyptologists call it G2. That's the label they give Khafra's pyramid. That stone box, like the one in the Great Pyramid, has no inscriptions on it whatsoever. Not a single one. There's not a single inscription anywhere in that pyramid, or we're talking about official inscriptions. There's later Arabic writing on the walls and stuff like that. There's even 20th century graffiti on the walls. We're not talking about that. We're talking about, you know, ancient official inscriptions. Nothing. Zip. Zero.
Right.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
But the thing is, and here, you know, here's the kicker. Yeah, here's the kicker. Khafra had siblings. Yeah, he had brothers and sisters. Kawab, Merisank, you know, and a couple of others, you know, and we've got the sarcophagus, we've got the stone boxes, the granite boxes for those guys and girls, yeah.
Well, yeah.
They're all decorated. They've all got their names on them. They've all got their royal titles on them, yeah. This is, you know, Khafra's siblings, his brothers and sisters. We've got their sarcophagi. They're there in the Cairo Museum, and they're all named. But Khafra's stone box, not a thing on it, not a single thing. So if they were doing it, you know, if they were putting the names of the deceased on the boxes for his brothers and sisters, why didn't they do it for Khafra?
Exactly. Yeah.
And here's the other thing as well, Patricia. What you have to understand is in the ancient Egyptian religion, their soul was comprised of 9 different components, if you like. Like to the ancient Egyptians, a person's shadow was part of their soul.
Oh my.
A person's name was part of their soul. Yeah. And, they had a thing called the Ba. The Ba was like a person's personality. That's a kind of rough modern understanding of what Ba. It's the closest thing that we can come up to with what Ba to the ancient Egyptians actually was. It's the individual's personality. Now, the Ba would leave the tomb during the day. It was like a little bird, and it would fly away, and then at night it would come back to the tomb, and it would it would flutter over the tomb. You see these in some of the images in tombs of the sarcophagus of the deceased lying there with a small bird flying over the deceased. That's the Ba of the person. Now the thing is, the Ba can only find the person if the person's name is on their tomb somewhere. On their tomb, the name is it's called the Ren. That's what the ancient Egyptians called a person's name. It's called the Ren. So the Ba and the Ren, there's this symbiotic relationship between them. The Ba couldn't find the correct tomb if the name wasn't there. So it was important to put the name on the person's tomb. Otherwise the Ba couldn't. And if the Ba couldn't find the body,
but then
the king
couldn't proceed. But that's, what's so fascinating to me, and this, Patricia, goes right into your work as a numerologist, it's all vibration, which the Egyptians understood better than any culture that we know of, I believe, and that's acknowledged as a real culture. I'm not talking about the Atlanteans because some people don't even think they existed, but certainly the Egyptians understood vibration, the vibration of a name. And Patricia, you've talked about this a lot in terms of how powerful that is, the name that you use. And now here's Scott saying that, you can't go on to the next step until you are recognized and found with your name. That's fascinating. Well,
I wonder, was there an issue with his siblings that they did not proceed to put his name out? Or was it he that would not allow it?
Well, it's the thing is, Patricia, so this is Patricia K.
Kirkman.
Is that? Yeah. The thing about the ancient Egyptian religion is that if the king, if his Ba and Ka could not unite, the king could not become an Ak. He could not transform into what's called an Ak, which is a spiritual light. And if his Ba could not find and could not unite with the Ka in the tomb, the king could not then go on into the afterlife, and the king would die what's called a second death, and that would be the king dead forever. And this just was not allowed to happen, because the king had to go to the afterlife to commune with the gods, for the benevolence of Egypt. The gods would ensure that the crops would grow, the Nile would flood, and so forth and so on. So if the king couldn't, ascend to the afterlife, that would break. That communication between the gods and the land of Egypt would break, and there could be droughts and floods and chaos in the land. So so it was important, it was vital, it was crucial that the king's Ba and Ka could unite, and that the king's body was not desecrated in any way, because if the Ba couldn't recognize the body, it couldn't unite with the Ka to create an Ak for the king's soul, a being of light for the king's soul to ascend into the afterlife. So it was important. This was part of their religion. And it would be the king's priests, the cult, that would ensure that everything was in place to make sure that that this alchemy, if you like, could occur. And this is a great mystery. Why, if this was so important for the king to ascend to the afterlife, why is his name not anywhere in his tomb? It just doesn't make sense. This is why I think these first pyramids had a completely different purpose. And what I'm saying,
weren't tombs. They weren't ever meant to be tombs.
They weren't ever meant to be tombs. However, what they were intended for gave rise to the later religion that we understand and Egyptologists understand today. And that's, what I just described to you there. That idea, that whole concept of the Ba and the Ka uniting to create an act of spiritual light, that religious idea developed later as part of what the original the original pyramids were. The true purpose of those pyramids.
And that's what you claim that you found, that you've unearthed this purpose. But there's a lot of theories out there about what this could be. One of my favorites is, that the pyramid is actually a symbol of the human brain. You've heard that one before?
I was actually reading something about that just the other day. I didn't actually go into in too much detail, but I'm sure I read something about that probably about 2 or 3 years ago. But the way the chambers were laid out and so forth and so on, they could correlate it to certain parts of the brain and so forth and so on. Well, there's mysteries. There's mysteries.
I know they are endless.
I take the view. I mean, I'm an engineer. Yeah, I've got a curious.
And a detective. Patricia and I have determined you're also a detective. Okay, go ahead.
That's for sure.
Well, a detective in the sense that, if I've got a question, I need to get an answer.
Right.
And so, I headed off. I had this theory of, where this secret chamber. And the reason the secret chamber idea came up was because of what I believe these first 16 pyramids actually were. And this is what I come back to about the legend of Osiris, his body being cut into 16 pieces, and the pyramid text saying the pyramid is Osiris. So I'm thinking, well, maybe the first 16 pyramids were Osiris. You know how, like today, the Christian church is described in some terms as the body of Christ, even though it's scattered all over the world? Mm-hmm. The church, the physical church, is like the body of Christ. Metaphorically, obviously, is the body of Christ. But I'm thinking, well, this could be a similar idea that the first 16 pyramids were actually the parts of Osiris, spread across the land of Egypt, scattered across the land of Egypt. So what I did was I got my favourite friend, which is Google Earth. And I plotted onto Google Earth the locations of the first giant pyramids in Egypt. That was the first 11 giant pyramids plus the 3 Queen's pyramids, and that's 17 pyramids. And there's 2 small cult pyramids at Giza also, so that's a total of 19. 3 of them we know were never finished, so that takes us down to 16. So that's where I get the first 16 pyramids. Mm-hmm. And what I found, now described to you at the top of the program, Patricia, the classic effigy or the classic shape or figure of Osiris. He stands there, he's just looking off sideways with the atef crown, the 3-pronged atef crown. The centre prong is slightly taller than the 2 at the side. He's got the royal regalia of the crook and flail with his arms crossed, and then his legs just go down straight. What I found when I plotted these first pyramids, these first 16 pyramids onto the map of Google, was it created an outline of that figure. A crude outline, like a stick outline of that classic Osiris figure with the atef crown, the crossed arms with the crook and flail. It was there. My goodness, you could have knocked me over with a feather.
Really? Wow.
Incredible.
So there we have it. The ancient Egyptian text, the pyramid text, say it quite explicitly. The pyramid is Osiris. That also tells us, the legend of Osiris tells us that Osiris, the body of Osiris, was cut into 16 pieces. So there we have it. And the legend also tells us that there's Isis, when she heard that her husband had been murdered and his body had been cut up and scattered across the land, went looking for all the body parts to bind them together. She got all the body parts, but one was still missing. And this is what I think we're being told. I think Isis, she could find she could find all the other parts because they were visible. They're giant pyramids. You couldn't miss them. She found them easily enough, but there's a missing part which she couldn't find because it's not visible like the pyramids. It's been hidden away. And I go into the book with a little bit of geometry, and using this simple geometry, it points to a location to the southwest of the Giza pyramid field. And I've pinpointed that onto Google Earth, and I went there in 2008, and I took with me a small pyramidion or a small apex or capstone, a small pyramid capstone, which I could hold in my hand. And I hoped that I would be able, because this geometry created a triangle which pointed to this location around the three great pyramids. It's a very unique triangle. It can only be this one triangle using this particular geometric technique. And this creates a unique triangle around the three pyramids, because there's an ancient legend as well which tells us that the books of Osiris are hidden away and they will be found by the three. And that's pretty much all it tells us, that the books of Osiris...
Again, more deep symbolism. It's more maddening.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Well, listen, we're going to take just a very short commercial break. We will be right back, and we want to hear more. Now, we've got some callers that are calling in with questions. We have people in the chat room that want to know, how do you feel the pyramids were built, and lots of other questions for you, Scott. So everybody stay tuned. Again, if you have a question for Scott, feel free to call in at 646-478-0828. Again, that's 646-478-0828 if you want to join this incredible discussion about ancient Egypt and what is the secret chamber of Osiris, the purpose of these pyramids. We are still waiting to find out the whole truth here from Scott and his beautiful brogue. We will be right back.
Ready for a new experience of freedom and powerful connection? Would you like a positive, effortless change in your life? Then come to CosmicFusion.com, where we offer the most advanced energy clearing and expansion techniques in the world, with a quantum vortex energy to activate your divine blueprint and life's purpose. When your soul leads the way with cosmic fusion and quantum vortex energy, you can break clear of past difficulties and blocks with the power of the Source. With Cosmic Fusion, the Source energy does the work for you. It's easy and effortless. Listen to our free meditation right from our Cosmic Fusion website, the Cosmic Code Meditation. Sign up for one of our interactive webinars today. Come to Cosmic Fusion, www.CosmicFusion.com, to experience an effortless awakening and transformation. Are you ready for an upgrade? Are you ready for a new experience of living in the fifth dimensional magic and powerful connection? Then visit CosmicFusion.com today. CosmicFusion.com.
Your property tax bill. Have you seen it lately? It's frightening. Your property taxes are going up while your home value is going down. It's time to fight back and win. For the real truth about the property tax system, get attorney Pat Quintilian's book, Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Attorney Quintilian answers all your questions and gives you the facts you need to fight a property tax bill that is spiraling out of control. You'll also read about what happens to property owners who don't check their property records, only to find out too late they're taxed on square footage, fixtures, and even buildings that they don't own. Is this happening to you? Learn your rights. Buy attorney Pat Quintilian's book today. Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Available on Amazon.com.
Bonjour, this is Veronique Raskin, founder of the Organic Wine Company. As one of the pioneers of the organic wine movement, since 1980 I have brought you the very best and most authentic organic wines directly to your table. I work with small family estates who grow certified organic grapes and produce exceptional wines. You can purchase our wines individually from our website at theorganicwinecompany.com or join one of our wine clubs. Our organic wines are perfect for you and for your family as gifts for friends and relatives, and they are simply spectacular for the holidays. Visit us at theorganicwinecompany.com to enjoy the very best organic wines conveniently delivered to your door. I am Veronique Raskin, passionate about my mission. I offer to you vegan, organic, and biodynamic wines, wines made by people of the heart, wines with a heart. Au revoir. Call us at 1-888-ECO-WINE.
Everyone, we are back in ancient Egypt tonight with author Scott Creighton, who has written a fascinating book. It's so interesting, The Secret Chamber of Osiris and Lost Knowledge of the 16 Pyramids. So we've got a caller. I'm going to get this person on the line, and they want to make a comment about the two civilizations in Egypt. So, hi, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you for having me. How you doing?
We're all doing great. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. I just wanted to ask the brother that was speaking, that is very influent with the and as well as learning about the ancient Egyptians. I noticed that you was talking about, you felt within your spirit that it was as if there were two different civilizations at the time. In the comment that you made, you was referring to there might have been, not just one civilization among them, but two coexisting.
I think my own view is that the first pyramids are much, much older than we are actually told by Egyptologists. Egyptologists think that, the Egyptian civilization began about 5,000 years ago, roughly about 3,100 BC, somewhere around about that. And it's just essentially a continuous, unbroken line of pyramids being built from, roughly the third dynasty onwards. But I take the view that these structures, and I show why in the book, are actually nearer. The first giant pyramids are nearer 19,000 years old, and they're completely different in so many ways to the pyramids that came later. The pyramids that came later, some of them were even built with mud brick, whereas the first giant pyramids were, they were built in dressed stone, using dressed limestone blocks, giant blocks, 2.5 tons, and granite blocks of upwards of 50, 70 tons. Whereas the much smaller pyramids from like the 5th, 6th dynasty onwards were much inferior. The core of those pyramids were essentially rubble, just literally rubble, mud brick and rubble, with just a veneer of a pyramid shell on the outside. Almost like they were building a symbolic pyramid, or building a pyramid as some kind of homage or something. So that they're completely different in nature. And my view is that the ancient Egyptians of the 4th dynasty that we believe built those structures, the pharaohs Khufu, Khafra, and so forth and so on, actually, as the late author, the late great author Alan Alford believes that they inherited, or they came across these structures, and they essentially, the kings of the 4th dynasty essentially, repurposed structures that were already ancient in their time for themselves. And that is why, the stories have come down to us that these guys built them. Whereas, in fact, if you look at the inventory stela, which was found by a French archaeologist, Auguste Mariette, it actually talks about how Khufu repaired various structures at Giza, including the Sphinx, incidentally. And, how could he possibly have repaired the Sphinx? The Sphinx wouldn't have been there until his son actually constructed it. So there's all these contradictions that we're confronted with in the chronology that the Egyptologists present to us. So that's just one of them. And there's several. So I present in the book The Secret Chamber of Osiris, and I show how those structures actually at Giza, they actually present a stellar clock. You may be familiar with the theory of Robert Bauval about the Orion constellation, and how the 3 great pyramids represent the belt stars of the 3 belt stars of the Orion constellation, and roughly 10,000 BC, I think Robert dates that to. Well, I've taken that a good step further onwards again, because I think the most important thing at Giza are in terms of the stellar star clock, are the 2 sets of 3 smaller satellite pyramids, what the Egyptologists call the Queen's Pyramids. They are actually the key to actually dating the site. Not the big pyramids are part of it, but the 2 sets of 3 smaller so-called Queen's Pyramids are the key to actually dating the site, which Robert doesn't go into, but which I go into in the book. And it actually shows the Sphinx is actually the clock hand. It's the hand of the clock, and it points to a date of roughly 17,000 BC, which makes the pyramids, almost 19,000 years old.
Wow!
And
Incredible.
So much older than what most people think. So, okay, so did that answer your question for you?
Yes, and also I just wanted to add, in my study and in my research into the ancient Egyptians and the pyramids, I've come to discover that the best way that I can understand this whole thing is to be in the mind of those that were in that day. And there is a such thing in that time. There were a such thing as god kings, and I know this might be far-fetched from the Christian religion, but hey, that is so. But it did exist, and we can't take that away from what has happened in the earth. So what has happened is that there's a difference between the God kings and there's a difference between man. And in my study of coming to study this thing and to see this thing, these later pyramids that you're talking about that are like, more kind of modern or whatever, they're more so like that which was built by man. And those that were more grotesque or more accurate in their account. But you have to place yourself there. You see what I'm saying? Like we can try to study this thing on the outside looking in. That's what I had to learn. But by doing so, I would make my own assumptions, and sometimes that would lead me with inaccurate facts and also still unanswered questions. But if I delve into the experience in what was there, not what's here right now, what you're seeing around you, but take your mind, allow your mind to go there in that what you're studying. And I tell you, man, you'll find some amazing, exhilarating facts that will blow your mind. And we truly did
really
want to share this earth with God kings.
Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective.
But that war that broke out with Osiris and Set kind of like divided the civilizations. That was really the first split of the Upper and Lower Egypt. That war that went on, because if you look at the sense, most people held Osiris as a savior. You see, and those who they know that the brother that killed Osiris, they know that he was held as the evil one. So that gave you the evil or the light and darkness of the Upper and Lower Egypt. So out of that came two civilizations, and then one part of that civilization of ancient Egypt that got so dark began to start worshiping serpents and dragons. You feel me?
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective, and excuse me. Thank you so much for your call and for your insightful comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I love you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love our callers because they have their own perspective on things. It's usually a very spiritual one, and they have their own way of looking at all of this, and it just adds even another dimension to what we're discussing. So thank you again, caller. That was excellent comments, great question. So here you did answer one of the questions also, Scott, that came from the chat room, just happened to fall into this last caller's question. They wanted to know how old you think the pyramids are, and you answered that. You do believe they're around 19,000 years old? Is that what you think?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you consider what the ancient Egyptians themselves tell us, your caller there touched on it, which I thought was good, is that they tell us that they're, in their own words, they tell us that their civilization is tens of thousands of years older than what we are saying it is. They tell us the civilization is almost, I think, about 40,000 years old.
Wow.
And they talk about the time of the gods. They talk about, which is what your caller was saying. They talk about times of the gods, the demigods, the Shemsu Hor, who were the followers of Horus. Then we get down to the seven sages, and then after that it's the mortal kings. And in the mortal kings, between dynasties, I think it's dynasties 4 to 8. There's something like 150 missing kings from the king list that we know. We know there's 150 missing names from just between dynasties.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. If you take an average of 15, years per reign, or 20 years, whatever, that's a lot of years, of missing history just from between dynasties 4 and 8. And we're talking about the ancient Egyptians who tell us themselves that their civilization goes way back, way back, 40,000 years ago. Now, people keep asking the question. The author Graham Hancock, he talks, his seminal work, The Fingerprints of the Gods, an incredible book, and he talks about this civilization that existed on the earth thousands of years ago, and they have left their traces, they've left their mark, their fingerprints in these giant stone monolithic monuments all over the world, not just in Egypt, all over the world. And the thing is, we don't know, and take the heads of Easter Island, for example, we still don't really know that much about the culture that constructed those things. Stonehenge, we don't know much about the culture that constructed Stonehenge, and various other monuments and the giant blocks in Lebanon. We don't know much about the culture that created these things. They're a mystery, and people keep asking, well, if a lost civilization, constructed Egypt, where are they? Where are the traces of them? Well, we don't have the traces of all these other civilizations around the world. They're lost to us because they are so far back. Sorry?
You're right, but here's the question then that's coming from the chat room about that right now. Do you believe that the pyramids may have been built by ETs?
I take the view that the ancient Egyptians themselves tell us that the civilization is 40,000 years old, and they were built in the time of the gods. Now, you can take out of that, what you will. What I can tell you is that there is an incredibly advanced technology in terms of working the stonework, particularly the granite. We're told that this granite, which is incredibly hard stone to work, was worked with copper chisels and stone pounders, which I just do not buy at all. I just don't think it's capable. When you see these massive granite stone boxes in the Serapeum, these things are so big that they think they built them to put a bull inside the thing. They're so big, and the lid itself weighs something like, I think it's something like about 5 tons. That's just the lid, and the angles, it's laser precision, in these boxes, done with a copper chisel and a stone pounder. I really don't think so. When you look at what I show in the book, when you look
exactly.
at,
how could this be? We can't even duplicate this structure today with our own technology.
Well, I think there's a misconception there. We could do it, but it would, the wherewithal to do it, the cost to do it, the political will to do it, you just could not get today. You couldn't get it. But, we've got cranes that could lift 70-ton blocks. Yeah, we do. But it would be a monumental task for us today. But,
it would take
we could
so
do
long.
It.
And, when I was in school, elementary school, like a million years ago, I remember looking at the books, and they had these depictions of these poor slaves having to drag these 70-ton blocks, and I'm like, seriously? Even then, I think, most kids knew, hey, this didn't happen this way. So, how do you think it happened?
Well, I don't think the colossal ramp theory that the Egyptologists come up with just holds much water, because as I said at the top of the show, Patricia, that would have been an inordinate amount of work of its own. It would have been every bit as large a construction project for the ramp, which would need to have been about a mile long to have an incline that wasn't too steep. So that would be as big a project, if not bigger, than the actual construction of the pyramid itself. So I really don't think I think they probably used some ramps to get the blocks maybe from the quarry to the base of the pyramids, but then they had some kind of technology to raise the stones onto the pyramid. One of the legends that's come down to us is that the ancient Egyptians flew the stones into place. would apparently cover the stone with paper, and they would strike it with a rod, and the stone would rise up onto the pyramid. Now, I talk about this in the book, and myself being an engineer, I have to rationalize this in my sort of physical world, and I present, well, how could they have done this? How could stones float into place? And I looked at some of the evidence around Giza, and I came across these pits, these unusual pits. They were like double pits, and they were connected at the bottom with a small horizontal connector, like a U-shape. Yeah, these pits were about 15, 20 feet deep, side by side with a horizontal connector at the bottom. And then I saw these images in the Temple of Dendera, where it's got this, it looks like, you've probably seen this thing, they call it the Dendera light bulb. It looks like a giant light bulb.
Yes.
And there's this theory that the ancient Egyptians had light. Well, that to me actually looks like a balloon, a modern hot air balloon being inflated. It's always horizontal to begin with, and then on another wall in the same temple, you actually see these balloon shapes, but they're vertical, and they look like they're carrying stones underneath the balloon. Yeah, so it's almost like they were using hot air balloons to raise these stones. That's what it looks like. That's what.
But you're talking about a hot air balloon used to raise a 70-ton block. That's pretty amazing in and of itself.
Well, I think it could be problematic, but probably not impossible. In America, before they had machines to do this work, they actually used hot air balloons in these logging places, where they cut trees down. They used these hot air balloons to actually, raise these massive trees and to move them elsewhere. So the hot air balloons are used, or were used even in our civilization to lift very heavy loads. So it's probably not impossible if you had a large enough balloon with enough heat. And this is what these U-shaped pits, the side of the pyramid could have been, because there's a type of fire, it's called a Dakota fire pit, and it's a special type of fire. Basically, you put a fire in one of the pits, and the other pit acts as a cold air current, which creates a convection current. Cold air is fed down the other vertical shaft, and the horizontal connector at the bottom, it creates a convection current. And that type of fire burns incredibly hot. It's very, very efficient and creates no smoke. And it's not disturbed by prevailing weather conditions. And it's so deep, the naked flame wouldn't actually catch the material, because the ancient Egyptians, they were the first people to make linen and paper. And the Mengofi brothers, who we think in the early 18th century, mid-18th century, built the first modern hot air balloon. They made it out of linen and paper, the two materials that the ancient Egyptians invented. So all the materials were there. And if you look right beside the Great Pyramids, there's these U-shaped pits which could very easily be used as I describe in the book, a Dakota fire pit, which burns incredibly hot. And, you just need a big enough envelope, and, you can raise very heavy blocks. A balloon with 125 feet diameter can raise something like 2 average pyramid blocks. That's 5 tons. And the pyramid is 750 feet roughly long on each side. So you could get 4 of these, along the side of the pyramid easily. So it's theoretical. It's me and my modern engineering brain trying to figure out, well, how could they do this? But looking at it as well from an evidence, physical evidence point of view, and there's these pits which Egyptologists don't really know why they would build these double pits with this U shape. They don't really understand why they did it, and that's one possible explanation. I'm not saying, and certainly don't insist, that this is how they did it. I'm merely hypothesizing here. It could be, they could have flew the stones into place with a method and a technique that we have completely lost. Graham Hancock, he talks about we are a species with amnesia, and I think he's right.
It's
I
true.
think there's a big, Patricia, there's a big chunk of our history that is lost.
Absolutely. It's like we've devolved instead of being more evolved than what ancient Egyptian was. We've devolved. So in
I
some way.
haven't heard that expression, but I like that expression, devolved. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good way to describe it. It's like we've lost this. I believe we went through. Our ancestors went through a very traumatic period, 19,000 or years ago, when something happened that caused the ice sheets in North America and in Europe to go into meltdown. We still don't know to this day what that trigger was for that event. We don't know exactly what the catalyst was to cause those ice sheets to go into meltdown 19,000 years ago. And I think what caused those ice sheets to go into meltdown 19,000 years ago was the same event, whatever it was, that caused the ancient Egyptians to build these 16 pyramids. Because this is what the ancient Egyptians tell us in their own texts that have come down to us. They tell us that something happened in the sky, and the king asked his priest, what does this mean? The priest told the king it means in 300 years' time there will be a great flood which will basically destroy the entire kingdom forever. The king then said, we are going to build pyramids, and inside these pyramids we're going to store everything that we need to reconstitute our kingdom again after the worst effects of this flood has passed. That is the story, the legend that you don't see written in the books.
Not at all.
The Egyptologists just, the Egyptologists just go with the paradigm that there were tombs. Yeah, there were tombs later on, probably because they were repurposed. But the original function, this is what we are told by the other texts that have come down to us that were preserved by the ancient Arab chroniclers. They have preserved these ancient Egyptian texts that talk of King Saurid, who was told by his astronomer priests that there was, this change in the sky that they observed would result in 300 years. There would be a great flood, the Deluge of Thoth, which would basically wipe, Egypt would be drowned. And so this is what the king instructed they would do. They would build these pyramid arcs. And inside these pyramid arcs, they would store everything, including grain, all sorts of seeds. They would put inside these first 16 pyramids the body of Osiris. Yeah, and that is why Osiris is associated with the grain. In the pyramid text, it tells us Osiris is the grain. That is why Osiris' face is green, because he's associated with agriculture. He's associated with rebirth. And this is why Osiris is associated with rebirth, because that is what the ancient Egyptians of 19,000 years ago were trying to do. They were trying to ensure not the rebirth of the king, the rebirth of the kingdom.
Oh, that's fascinating.
It was the tomb of the kingdom. Later it would become the tomb of the king, but originally it was the womb of the kingdom. That's how I describe it. And that is what they set out to do. And, if you look at the step pyramid, we discussed that earlier at the top of the show. When the first explorers in the early 20th century went underneath the step pyramid at Saqqara, they were walking up to their shins through long passageways, and it's kilometres. The passageways under the step pyramid, they're kilometres in length, all added together. It's a warren down there. They were walking shin deep in grain. There was 40,000, they found something like 40,000 stone vessels underneath that one pyramid alone. In the Great Pyramid, there's evidence, secondary evidence, that there was massive grain stored in the Great Pyramid as well. So I'm not saying they just stored grain. They would have stored all sorts of other things as well, tools and so forth, other materials and so forth. These were essentially pyramid arcs to ensure the rebirth of the kingdom. But they wouldn't put the important stuff, and they would put the material that was essential to kickstart life, kickstart a food source and so forth and so on. But their precious texts, their precious books, treasures or whatever, they're not going to store that kind of stuff in a pyramid which is going to be visible from 50 miles away, because you're not wanting your average tomb robber to come and break into the pyramid and steal all the precious stuff out. If that robber knows all that's in these structures is grain, it's not going to be worth their time and effort to break in and steal, some grain. So what they're going to do?
Yeah, go ahead. What did they do?
Well, their precious items, I believe, what the legends have come down to is the books of Osiris, the Hall of Records, which some people call it. They couldn't put that in the pyramids because it's too obvious. They had to devise a way where more enlightened minds would be able to work out where this was stored, because you don't want just your average Joe getting in there, trashing the place in search of treasure, tearing up these ancient sacred books because it's not gold. You don't want that to happen. So you're going to hide that stuff not in a pyramid, hide it somewhere underground, and that is what I think the lost part of Osiris is, which ISIS couldn't find, because it's a way of telling us it's hidden. And this is what the Hermetic texts tell us. The lost part of Osiris is hidden away. The books are hidden away, and they will be found by 3. And I puzzled about that. What does this? They'll be found by 3. What does that mean? And then,
what does that mean? We want to know.
Well, some people think it's 3 kings. Some people think it is 3 people. My view is that it's the 3 pyramids, the 3 great pyramids that stand side by side at Giza. They point the way. They are the keys to locating this hidden chamber. And so I came up with a theory using this very simple geometry, with the help of my young son, incidentally, who inspired me, because he asked a question. He was doing a maths project, and he said, "Dad, how do you find the centre of a triangle?" It was just a simple question, because I'd been trying to figure this out for months and months and months, and he just asked that innocent question for his maths project: how do you find the centre of a triangle? And I went, well, it depends. I'll spare you the geometry lesson, Patricia.
Please.
But it's basically called centroid geometry. In the ancient world, there was only three centroids that were understood in the ancient world, and these 3 centroids are, I understand or interpret as the keys. The 3 centroids. Each pyramid uses one of these 3 centroids, and by using one of these 3 ancient centroids, it constructs a unique triangle around the 3 Giza pyramids, and the tip of the triangle points a specific spot to the southwest of the Giza plateau. Now, I wrote to Dr. Hawass about this, and obviously I tried to get there. I couldn't get there because he'd built this wall
And you have a funny story about that wall. I love that
story.
You got to tell everybody in the audience about that one. That was really, I mean, that could have turned pretty bad for you, but it worked out.
It could have turned pretty nasty. It was a dark moment. It was a dark moment. But fortunately, my roots, by some fluke, my Scottish roots managed to get me out of it. So it was quite funny, and I thought it was, in retrospect, it was quite amusing. But it wasn't funny at the time. But in hindsight now, I can look back on it and laugh a little bit about it. But when you see that Glock hand pistol, so that you're just like,
that must have stopped your breathing. Yeah.
So just basically trying to get to a piece of Egyptian desert where there's nothing there. There's nothing there. I've stood between the paws of the Sphinx reading the Dream Stela. Now, this is a carving, granite carving that stands between the paws of the Sphinx. Now, there's some badge-carrying Egyptologists, official Egyptologists, that haven't even been able to do that. It's you've got to basically put money into the right hands, if I can put it like that, to get into there. So I was able to get in. It's one of the most sacred places in Egypt, and I was able to get in. But there's this piece of dirt ground where there's nothing but sand dunes that I couldn't get into because it was all fenced off. So anyway,
and that's the sad part about Zahi Hawass. I mean, he really did not help anybody like you that wanted to go and respectfully explore these areas. Yeah. He did everything in his power to keep people like you out. Well,
I was going, my trip to this particular spot, which I believe is this Hall of Records, the Lost Books of Osiris, there will be an underground chamber there. I have a good hunch that's probably right. I can understand how Dr. Hawass he has got a difficult job, but he doesn't make things easy for himself either. But he's got a difficult job. I respect a lot of what he does. But it's like you've got to toe the party line, to get permission to do anything in Egypt. If you dissent from the script, you don't get a search permit or anything in Egypt. You've got to be from an affiliated university, blah blah blah. Otherwise, it's just a no-no. So I wrote to Dr. Hawass when I came back from my little adventure, and I explained this theory to him. This was, I think, in December 2009 or December 2008. I think it would be. I wrote to Dr. Hawass to explain this theory, and I think it's February or March 2009. I happened to be looking on Google Earth, and Google Earth has got a time lapse where you can actually go back in time to look at a particular spot of ground to see, what it was like, what a couple of years ago or 10 years ago, whatever, which is very useful. So I looked at this spot. I call it the apex point, and where I believe this hidden chamber is the secret chamber of Osiris, where these books will be found in an underground chamber. That's the part of the body of Osiris which Isis could not find. Now, I wrote to Hawass and explained it, and then that was December 2008. March 2009, I happened to be looking on Google Earth, and there was all the diggers and the lorries and the excavators digging it all up.
Oh, my goodness. So they figured out the same thing, huh?
And here's the thing. A friend that I work with sent me some gamma-filtered photographs of it. I never thought of doing this, but he did. And he sent me these gamma-filtered photographs of the site. And you can actually see at the very location which I identified, and I didn't see this at the time. I just said, there's X marks the spot. There's that spot there. That's where I think it is. And I didn't think of doing the gamma filtered photographs, but he did, and he sent me them a few months later and said, look at that. And I looked, and there was this geometric, through the gamma filter, you can actually see some geometric form underneath the sand.
Oh,
right
my goodness.
Right at the location. And there's all these diggers and everything going all about it. And you can actually go onto Google Earth and you can actually see it yourself. You know, it's just to the southwest of the Giza Pyramid Field. And if you go back to like March, February, March, April, May, June 2009, you can actually see it all happening.
Right.
You know,
my goodness. Well, this must have been a very exciting thing for you to know that you actually pinpointed this. And
well, it's frustrating because the Hawass hasn't told me anything since. It's all just gone quiet.
How nasty of him.
So I
Patricia, I think you
myself.
need to do the numbers on that Zahi Hawass. See what in the world's up with him.
Good Lord, isn't that
You got
sad?
your work cut out for you there because, I hear you, Scott, how frustrating that is. You pinpoint something, you're waiting for information, you feel like you're a team player, you'd like to know more, and there's nothing forthcoming. Very frustrating. But still, we applaud you because you did discover this all on your own.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. So interesting.
Yes. Great work, Detective Creighton.
Yeah, well, as I said, I was hoping to go back, over the last couple of years, but there's just so much, as you were talking just before I came on air, all the trouble in the world, it's just all over the place, it's just a shame, it's just, I wanted to go there, but it's just too risky.
It's
a
very
world
risky.
that we're living in right
now. Yeah, it's too scary,
Which is
and
sad.
you don't want to. You have a family. You have a path you're walking that you'd like to walk with them, I'm sure. So, But oh my goodness, Scott, what a wonderful, wonderful hour and a half it's been with you. We just can't thank you enough, and I feel like, my goodness, we just scratched the surface of your fascinating book. And again, for everybody out there, the book that Scott has written is called The Secret Chamber of Osiris and Lost Knowledge of the 16 Pyramids. You got to get this book. You got to see all of the things that happened to Scott along the way, and again, how he figured all of this out all on his own. So, Scott, thank you, and we do hope you'll go and get a nice good night's sleep after your late night with us.
Well, listen, Patricia, thanks. It's been an absolute blast. I've thoroughly enjoyed the show, and thanks to your callers and all your listeners.
It's been a delight, Scott. A delight.
Yes, it was wonderful. And you're going to have to come back when you do your next book, okay? We are going to count on that.
Well, the next book's it's already on the go. It will be out probably not this December, December 2016. It's called The Great Pyramid Hoax. That'll be it.
All right. Well, you better get a hold of us for that one. We'll have you back on the air for another late night in Scotland. And
Absolutely.
Again, Scott, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah,
it's
thank
fabulous.
you too. Enjoy
Good
the rest
night.
of your evening, okay?
Thank you very much.
So
Cheerio.
next week, Patricia, this has been fascinating, hasn't it, with Scott?
Yes, it has. And I kept thinking up to number 7 about secrets. And that's what the whole thing was about. Even those that could help him kept it a secret.
Yeah, those stinkers. And that's how it is over there. You really get cooking on something, but you can't get the help you need to take it to the next level. But Scott is so smart. He figured all this out, and he knew exactly where the secret chamber was. So hopefully someday we'll hear the rest of the story from what they pull out of that sacred chamber and secret chamber. But in the meantime, next week we have our favorite Southern witch coming back. Orion Foxwood, with his new book, is going to join us next week. And I have so many questions for him. Oh, my goodness. So we're going to be talking about magic and fairies and all of that fun stuff. So everybody out there, thanks for joining us. And Patricia.
Yeah.
I so enjoy your company on the show.
Oh, you're a sweetheart. I just get to listen to all this fabulous information, and I just sit here and I'm like a little kid in a candy store. It is so fascinating. We are so
really
fortunate to have so many talented people that you're able to bring to us.
Oh, my goodness. Well, there's so many out there. And, again, here's Scott that gave us his time, late night in Scotland for him. And, yet we had a great, clear phone line with him and got all this incredible, mysterious information. It's going to be found by the 3. I really want to know what that is. So more to unfold as we go forward in this lifetime.
Remember,
yes.
3 is all about communication.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. So
see, we have other ways of looking at what's taking place.
Yes. Yes. Well, I'm hoping we'll hear the rest, and maybe someday these mysteries will be revealed to us in a way that we can finally understand what went on in ancient Egypt. Yeah, that would be nice.
Talk about the glyphs. Amazing.
Well, look, you enjoy the rest of your evening out there in our audience. Everybody in the audience, enjoy whatever you're going to be doing. And Patricia and I will see you on the Blue Highway, and be sure to tune in next week.
And I'm looking
Good night,
out
everybody.
At a fabulous rainbow.
Oh, how nice. That's a good sign.
A perfect way to end things.
That
Good
is.
night, my dear.
How beautiful. Good night, Patricia.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for another radio adventure with